main Maamarim of Akev. We'll be learning the last one. Let's bring up the text. Okay. Again, Akev talks a lot about the psukim. The verses talk a lot about Eretz Yisrael and the uniqueness and specialty of Eretz Yisrael. So one of the things that the pasuk describes about Eretz Yisrael is that it's Eretz Bekoim, it's Eretz Horim Uvkaos, a land of mountains and valleys. And it says Limtar Hashamayim Tishtemayim, that toward the rain of heaven it consumes the water. Meaning the Hebrew, the wording is a little seeming questionable. It shouldn't say Limtar Hashamayim. It said Mimtar Havalei Leimar. So the Rebbe asks, why does it say Limtar? It should say Mimtar, from the rain. It means the rain, as opposed to Egypt that had the Nile. Eretz Yisrael is a country that its water comes from the rain, Mimtar Shamayim, from the rain from heaven. What's Limtar? Towards the rain, seemingly. So it says like this. The verse, it says in Noach, it says, Adam. Man is made in the image of God. Pierce tselem, or form. Hutsura bailetes is like a form that perforates outwards. That if you're going to use it to stamp, it goes inwards. It means you could have a stamp that, this is an idea we've learned many times. You have a stamp that the stamp itself, let's say the ring on the stamp on the ring the image goes inwards. So if you, let's say, put the ring into hot wax, it would give a seal that perforates outwards. But if you have a ring that the carving goes outwards, so then the wax goes inwards. It goes opposite. Obviously, does it make space or does it push away the space? So it says b'tzelem alikim ki tzelem hu tzura b'letes. So what does it mean tzelem in God's form? What type of form are we talking about? A form b'letes that perforates outwards. That if you use it, it pushes inwards. It goes in. Shokea means it goes inwards. Like the tefillin also, right? The tefillin are a box going outwards, so it's perforating inwards. A person's like a stamp that goes inwards, which is opposite. So he explains. The left above makes the right below. It means everything is the opposite. If Hashem is going smile, is left, then it gives us space for right. If God is going right, so it gives us space for left. What does this mean in Avodah? The idea is like this. It says the Hashem Magdula, to God is greatness. Greatness, Gedula, is what the term used for chesed. In Kabbalistic terms before they used the word chesed. Gedula, greatness is chesed, is kindness. So this is God's attribute of kindness. What's the fuel behind kindness? Is God's greatness. He's great, and therefore it expresses itself that He has the ability to do what He wants, including kindness. He says everything that's above is opposite below. Again, like the stamp. The point that the Rebbe is getting at, the point of mountains and valleys is every mountain needs a valley, and every valley is a response to a mountain. And the question basically a person has to ask is in their Avodah, are they going outwards and God is going to respond inwards to make space so it fits? Or are we going to go inwards and make space for God expressing Himself? Now, if we, the point of the Maamar is, if we want to be expressive, so to say, initiate the relationship that we're moving outwards towards God, and this is all in a way of avodah. It's not in a way of ego. It's loving God, but it's all about I'm loving God. So God goes inwards to make space for our expression, and that expression also God responds to it. So depending on the size of the mountain, so to say, is the size of the valley. But if you're going to go inwards, so then what fills that space could be infinite, the Ein Sof. So that's why the idea is to, if your experience with Hashem is you want to be in the way of the Ein Sof, of the infinite, of the limitless. So don't express yourself outwards, go inwards, be bottled, totally nullified, and let God do all the expression. So that's what he's saying. The idea of greatness is midas chazdei sheba migdula, God's kindness, which is an expression. God going outwards, he's giving, comes from God's greatness. And it's the opposite below, meaning, like we find by Avram. Avram, who was midas hachesed, the attribute of kindness, but it says about Avram, the verse says, "V'anochi offer for God," that Avram feels, and he said this in his expression to God. He feels like dust and ash, and like we've learned before, what's the expression of dust and ash by Avram Avinu? That just like a tree has a form, and if you take away the three of the four elements, the Eish, Maim, and Ruach, there's no form of a tree, but the chomer, the substance is there. That's the dirt, the ash. So that's the of the four elements. So it's there. The tangible is there, but it has no form, no expression. So hey everyone. So here it says, Avram says, I'm like dust and I'm like earth. I have only the component of the offer, totally reconstructed. You can make me into anything. Why? Because he explains. What is the definition of being kind? Is to give from something from your life, from something that you have, whether it's tzedakah money to the poor person, or helping someone in something that you have that could help that person, that especially if the person needs your help. So you're giving lashbiya mechayev, you're giving from yourself to someone else. And the Rebbe says true chesed is not to give extras. True chesed is to give something that's chayiv, something that you could have lived on, something that's for you life. You're giving it away to someone else. Not that I have a surplus of energy, I have a surplus of time, I have a surplus of money, whatever the surplus is. Oh, my surplus I don't mind giving to God. That's Meitzers. Meitzers is I have leftovers anyways. It's going to go to waste. I might as well. I'm not a horrible person. I might as well put it towards something good. And there is a chesed, because it could have gone to the garbage, but it went to something good. Shazu midas Yishmael, because that's the attribute of Yishmael. Yishmael, which is the son of Avram, Nifrid v'yotzim imenu, comes out of Avram, so he has the attribute of chesed like his father, but Yishmael's chesed is Moisres. And within Moisres is agenda. It's not essential. I'm not ready to give something essential to me. I'm ready to give something that's either extra or I gain from it. Then it's not giving anything because I'm getting back something. We know that Avram, when he came back, he took care of all his debts. He paid up all his, we're talking about when he went to Egypt. So the Rashi says that the question is how he traveled. It's the Rashi says he traveled back the same way he came, even though he could have traveled better, because by the time he came back, the Torah tells us he was very wealthy from all the gifts that Paro gave him. So if he traveled in a motel on the way down to Egypt, he was able to travel in 5-star luxury because now he was a wealthier man. But Rashi says two things. One thing is he went on credit, so he had to pay up his debts. And the other thing was it shows you a midah of chesed, that the person remember the people that were with you when you weren't doing so well. These hotels gave you credit. A person shouldn't come and say, no, my life comes first. What I have to do comes first. Also, my chayecha, I'm not ready to give you. If I have extra surplus, I'll give you. So where does it come from? Where Avram Avinu is ready to give from himself, that his chesed. So we're talking about, again, you have to remember something. We're talking about chesed of Avram. We're not talking about gevura, severity. We're talking about chesed, but his chesed is because he's giving because of his humility. He doesn't look at himself as important. He himself is like leftovers, like shirayim, like leftovers. So therefore, he doesn't give himself such ego, and therefore he's ready to give from himself things that are chayiv, things that are essential to him, to others. And that's like water. Water again is the attribute of chesed, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. So what's Maim? Maim, where does Maim go? To the lowest spot. Where does it gather? Maim gathers in the lowest spot, in the valleys. creates the pools. Everyone knows, right? So you go to Seattle, there's the snow melts and the water goes down and creates a lake. What's Avram's response to God's kindness is not to match ego to ego. If God is l'cha hagdula, God is great, I'm great too. You make space for God's greatness to be able to be a receptacle to God's chesed. And how do you express it in itself of chesed? Your chesed is a definition of your humility, and therefore you're not limited to how much you can help and be kind to others by making yourself shirayim, making yourself like a leftover. And that's like the stamp going outwards, that if it stamps into the ink, into the wax goes inwards. God stamps into Avram. We know that when a person has love for God, in his or her heart, it's like a burning fire. Like it says, it's a flame of fire. So what's the nature of love? The nature of love is like the nature of the flame that wants to go outwards, wants to express itself. So too, the Jewish person's feeling of love for God is a feeling that wants the person to leave themselves and go out of their limitations of their body, go towards God. So therefore, it's the opposite. When you're having an expressive feelings of love, so he says it's the opposite, but it's really kind of dependent on the person, but it's a sign, the Rebbe says, that if it's smile, it's when God's hiding, because the Rebbe is going to explain, part of the trigger of the love is going towards something is the mystery or the hiddenness or the unknown. You're going towards it. So what's the unknown? God going inwards, concealing himself in creation. So when you're finding the love because of Ma Gadla Masach Hashem, Ma Rabba Masach Hashem, the greatness of God, means God is hiding himself in creation. And you're going towards that. So that's an expression the opposite. Mismal Shalmayla, from God's left, means going inwards. Left is Gevura, like limitations. Nasi Yamin Lamata, you're going outwards. V'zeh Shekasev, and therefore the Pasuk tells us that it's Eretz Horim Uvkaos. It's a country of mountains and valleys. Sometimes you're a mountain, sometimes you're a valley. If you're expressive, so you're expressing out, you're like a mountain, perforating outwards. But God meets that, he makes space for you. Or Uvkaos, or you're a valley, making space for God. And how you have a Sirusa, how you have an awakening from below, is a response from above. And there's two types. There's the fire going upwards, and there's the water coming downwards. Pirishki Eretz Knesset Yisrael. It says Eretz, says it's a land of mountains and valleys. What's the land? The land is referring to the collected Jewish people, Knesset Yisrael, the gathering of the Jewish people. Sometimes there's mountains, which is an avodah of an awakening from below, of yearning, ratzain, you have a desire towards God. Sometimes Avram is called a mountain. Expressive. And why is it plural? Because there's many types of love. There's different types of mountains. There's a love when a person is feeling happy. He or she is feeling happy. That's expressive of happiness. Then there's a love of bitterness because you love so much. It's not a humility. It's an expression of bitterness, of distance and disconnect, and lost opportunities of holiness and connection. But you're expressing yourself. You're feeling the again, when a person is bitter, there has to be a feeling of self. I'm bitter. A person who has total humility is less bitter, because who am I to be bitter? So bitter is also an expression of self. So there's different types of mountains of expression. The expression of happiness, the expression of bitterness, all in the expression of love. We're not talking about depression. We've learned many times the difference between atzvus and meriras. Atzvus is heavy, it slows you down, makes you stop functioning. Meriras is bitter, it inspires you, pushes you. V'derech klal, the Rebbe says in general, Harim, mountains. Mountain is the awakening of avodah, of expressing yourself. Boilet means you're like a stamp going outwards, and just like a stamp, right? So you've already pre-designed what the stamp is going to look like. Shalamata lamayla, going from below above. That's the fire. But the valleys, that's a stamp that goes inwards. Shalamata hainu bechinas bittul, that you become nullified. Yirah, it's not Yirah, just Yirah, because we're talking about Avram who's chesed, but Avram has the component of Yirah also. He doesn't have just one expression. But even, it means, it's not that when someone is going inwards, it's going inwards and therefore it's fear, because fear actually locks a person up of limiting their expression of kindness to Mashal. Avram, on the contrary, is because he's so kind, because he's so bittul, he's able to be limitlessly kind, because he's an expression of God's limitless. The kindness of God's limitless is running through him. It's not about me, it's not about my covet, it's not about how I see things, it's not my agenda about things. Ubekais lashon rabim. So what's the plural of valleys? Seemingly, okay, mountains, there's different types of expression of bitterness, happiness. But how could there be different levels of bittul? That there's different levels, there's valleys plurally. There's different types of fear. Again, this is the fear connected with Ava, with Chesed. God's 4 letters is, the first letter is going down, starting backwards. Hey is the last hey, the final hey is Yirah Tata, the lower level of Yirah, which included in it is all kind of Yirah about that's something connected to you, whether it is punishment on the lowest level or even fear of missing out or what have you. And then comes the lower level of love, which is the Vav. And then comes the higher level of love, which is the second hey. And then comes Yirah Ilah, the highest level of Yirah, which is the Yud, which is the being in awe of God. It's not a fear as in you're scared of something. So Dechilu, Rachimu, Rachimu, Dechilu is to have fear. Rachimu is to have love. Rachimu to have love, a second letter, the third letter going upwards, which is the hey, the second hey. Dechilu, which is the Yud, which is the fear. Hari Beis Pamim Rachimu, Beis Pamim Dechilu. There's 2 types of love and 2 types of fear. Beis Bechinas Harim, Beis Bechinas Uvkaos. There's 2 types of love and 2 types of fear. That's why it's plural mountains and plural valleys. We are navigating a bit in this Maamar, because the it's not just that the fear, like he said in the first Maamar. There's 2 Maamarim which kind of talks about the subject. In the first Maamar, he discusses that, for instance, even on the Kisei Kavod, on God's chair, that Yecheskel sees in the image of the Yecheskel, of the vision of the Merkava, of the chariot. So the right animal is the lion, and the left animal is the ox. And the lion represents love and fear. Why? Because it's love, which is the right side, or that's chesed, surely. But it's also, everyone knows a lion, like it says, Arya Yishag Mila Yira. If the lion roars, are you not going to be fearful? So it's the roar of the lion of love that the fear means you're connecting to the love, but such an awesome of love that you have a fear, you're in total awe of God. So that's Arya Yishag Mila Yira. God, the lion roars, and that's why the lion is the image that consumes the animals on the Mizbeach. There's the image of the lion. And the ox, which is a goring ox, which is Gvura, doesn't have that kind of effect. And that's why the Yomim Nerayim, it says that the days of awe are also Aryeh, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hoshana Rabbah, which makes up the letter of Aryeh, of a lion. So it's within the love itself. It's an experience of love. But our response of God's awesomeness of love, of God being the mountain and us being the valleys, is the fear. So it's the fear within the love. This awakening from above. We make space. So when we make space, we make a valley. What's God's response? So if you have to choose, it's not a question of choice, but if you have to know which one is greater, the Rebbe says it's better to permeate inwards, to go inwards than to express yourself outwards. Even though you feel more alive as a person of expression by going outwards towards God, which is he calls the fire, goes upwards. But the mayim, but making space for God in the water, which is the chesed, the great chesed to make space within you. Because again, when you're going outwards, you're the expressive one. God meets you, but you're the expressive one. When you go inwards, God's the expressive one. That's why it says, Arya Yishak Mila Yirah. If the lion's roaring, the God's roaring of love, then the expression is the lion roaring. And the lion roars, and you're going inwards, you have that awesome connection with the lion's roar. Because when you have an awakening from below that you're expressive, you're going outwards. God goes inwards. But when you have nullification, you go inwards. Then God responds. He goes outwards. And what comes outwards? What's the difference? Here he says the difference. You're letting God express himself like the roaring lion of the infinite without any hiding. He doesn't have to hide. You're letting God express himself in his full glory, so to say, which is Ein Sof, which is infinite. Is no longer going to be a garment that conceals. So when a person has an awakening, what's your Avodah? What's the means? My awakening from below is a way of going inwards and Bittul. I make myself secondary. It's not about me. And then it brings, it's like gravity. It pulls God's response much greater than God's response to our passion of fire, of expressing. The Rebbe says we could say Eretz Horim Uvkaos so you can say that's the same idea of the stamp of the Eretz of the mountains and the valley. And these parentheses are b'derech klal, the footnotes of the Alter of the Tzemach Tzedek. So he says v'chein armei Yaakov mayim b'liyayin. Of the two things, two liquids that we serve Hashem, again, both of them are part of the Avodah. Of nisach we pour. Traditionally, we pour the wine. Wine is connected to Levi. It's connected to Gvura. It's connected to Eish. Mayim is cold, and Mayim is humility. So throughout the year, we pour nisach hayayin. We pour the wines on the mizbeach. Comes Sukkot, we have the pouring of the water. And that's why this great simcha, the bittul. That's why there was prophecies. There was tremendous loss of self in the simcha of Sukkot, Simchas Torah. That's why Simchas Torah is the close, Sefer Torah. It's all connected. So what did Yaakov do? Yaakov says, "I want both." Armei mayim liyayim. He put water into the wine. Some people put water in the wine to save on the materials. But Yaakov did it as a way of avodah. He mixed the water into the yayin. The chesed with the gevurah, to have both the fire and the water. Lahamshich brachel yon to bring down a much greater blessing. Limtar shemaim tishtemayim. That's why we answer the question. It's not mimtar from the water, towards the water. We want water. We want God's expression. God's coming downwards. Limtar. Like a person who gives to drink, so the friend should give back. So God, we're pulling that God should express himself in a way of chesed, in the way of mayim, in a way of the water hitting the valleys. It's like the female waters to bring down the male waters. That's called mitar shemaim. Like that's Matar's idea of like the male semen. It's coming down, therefore plants. Now, the Alter Rebbe says that's the idea of the pouring of the water in Sukkot. On the 7th day of the 7 days of Sukkot. The fact that we pour the wine, which is part of the sacrifices throughout the year. That's the simcha of yayin. That's the simcha of wine, which is expressive. Shlemata b'chinas simchas hanefesh v'ahavah rabba l'Hashem. It's like a person who drinks alcohol, drinks wine, gets happy, and has great simcha, but expressive towards God. Without in shir halavim aliyayin. That's why the Levites, which are gvura, which is the gvura, but not the gvura of expression of the eish. They sang. When did the Levites sing? When they poured the wine. When they poured the water. Who b'chinas chachma? That's not bina. That's we know water is connected to chachma, which is higher than bina, which is the yud koyachma b'chinas bittul shu b'chinas chaysim sheker shalmata. That's me going inwards, making space for the water to be poured. And therefore, Yaakov Avinu mixed the waters and the wines to have a mixture of both. Cocktail. In Shmini Atzeres, comes Shmini Atzeres after we pour the wine. So when we're pouring the water, that's our avodah of making space, of making a valley. That's us pouring. And then what's the response after 7 days of pouring the water? He says that's like the female waters. It's Shmini Atzeres, comes Shmini Atzeres. That's where we make the blessing on the rain. That's the male water. That's what we know, that Shmini Atzeres is conception. And birth is on Shvisha Pesach, splitting of the Red Sea. Now that we're ready, after we poured the water for the 7 days, we're ready to receive the water from Hashem, which is the word Geshem. We make the blessing on water that comes from the skies. And now we're able to take in the Maim Duchrim, God's, so to say, seed. We're able to coil it, we're able to grasp it, which is what Shmini Atzeres is. Like the Alter Rebbe we learned many times in the Maamar of Shmini Atzeres and the Maamar of Shvisha Pesach, that Shmini Atzeres is the time that the God's seed, so to say, is coiled by the woman in the relationship of God and the Jewish people. Many times, like it says in Shir Hashirim by Shlomo Melech, God is the husband and the woman is and the Jewish people are the wife. So comes Shmini Atzeres, we're able to be coiled, the zera, the seed, and the birth of the souls of the Jewish people is why the Jewish people left in Egypt is Shvisha Pesach. That we drink the water, so to say, we limtar, so we should be able to bring God's expression of water. We create the valley so God can fill that space. For us to have the power to bring, to arouse from God His expression of what's called Maim Duchrim, the male seed, the male water, which happens in Shmini Atzeres is through the Nitzach HaMaim when we pour the water on Chag HaSukkos. It's like giving someone to drink, which is the pouring the 7 days. So God gives us back on the 8th day. Which goes to show you the greatness of the day of Shmini Atzeres. That's really the that's almost in the time of the year, almost like the intimacy time between husband and wife. The Rebbe says to understand this. Oh, sorry. Based on this, you have to remember something. That it's possible in certain calendar years that Shabbos Eikev, it's possible, could be Shabbos and Vorachem El. So, and ready in Eikev, in the Sichos, and in the Maamorim of Eikev, you can start seeing a hint to the Yom and the Raim, to the holidays. So, already getting into the spirit of the holidays, because Eikev can be a Shabbos and Vorachem El, I think sometimes. If not, it's of course Shabbos Rei, like this year. So the Rebbe says, and that's why we talk about the 13 attributes of Micha. Who's that God who's able to handle sin? A person who's she'eris nachlasei, a person who makes himself like Shirayim. If you make yourself secondary, you make yourself bittul, then God has no limits of what He can do with you, so to say. The 13 attributes of mercy, which is the ones of Micha, which are so much greater even than the 13 attributes of Moshe. The Rebbe says we have to ask why. Sometimes, like I mentioned before, then the earlier Kabbalistic works, it says the midas are Gedula, Gevura, and Tiferes, not Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, which is called Gagas, Gedula, Gevura, Tiferes. In the earlier texts of the Kabbalistic works, it refers to God's Chesed as Gedula, greatness, and the Eitz Chaim comes the Ariyah Kadosh, and he says Chagas, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. He calls it Chesed. The pasuk chsiv l'cha Hashem agdula v'gvura. But the verse says clearly, we say it every day in davening. Towards God is His gedula, His greatness, and that's chesed. The idea is kibi emes. The truth is Ein Sof kibi emes, but Ein Sof baruch in God's infinite. You can't define when God gives something as kindness in the word of chesed. Only because God's greatness has no limitations or no way even of comprehension that you could define it. Because of God his raft is long, and his chesed is great. God in the king is where real life is. Because he has an erech apayim, his patience is long. He gives great, tremendous chesed, like it says in other places. Therefore, in the true chesed, it's not a limited chesed. We could call it just chesed. It's all about the greatness of the chesed, the rav chesed, God's abundance of kindness. But this level of chesed that is limitless, and therefore the emphasis is on the greatness, not so much the kindness. Because what we're emphasizing is that the greatness of the chesed, the limitless of the chesed. Someone is kind. So we're saying, well, this person is very kind. But when you say rav chesed, a tremendous chesed, or gedol chesed, the greatness of chesed, the emphasis is not so much on the kind, the emphasis is on the limit. The person has no limits in their kindness. Every person reaches a limit. And here we say, say for God's greatness, we can't understand it because it's so great. Because there's God, nothing before God. Only God has such a level of greatness. But in creations which are limited, even chesed has a definition. And therefore, the comparison of our kindness to the kindness of the kindness of Ein Sof, is like a drop of this to the sea, and even greater than that. And therefore, Avram Avinu, who also was comparing his chesed to the chesed of Atzilus, which is lower than Gdol chesed. Therefore, he said, "Anechi offer vefer." Avram Avinu doesn't attribute saying, "Wow, I'm such a kind person. I feed everyone. I don't ask any questions. All I ask for you is to say, thank you, God." But he has no limits. Anyone who could come to Avram Avinu and he'll help them. But he says, when he looks at God's greatness, he says, I'm like dust and I'm dirt. Like we've learned, Avram says, my chesed is like literally the ash to the tree. Yes, the ash is the earth of the tree, but you can't compare a huge tree to the ash. The ash is a little pile and the tree is a huge tree. That's how Avram felt to God's chesed atzilus. Therefore, the higher someone is holy. It means the more you go to the truth, and what's emes? Emes is God. So the more you go to the truth, the more you're humble. Because as a chesed as I could be, that's only an expression of chesed. God's gedol chesed, an abundance of chesed. How could I look at myself as something special? And it's not just a person can say, I could have done more. Even no matter how much you're going to do is limited. Is nepechum b'chinas gedula v'chein ikar Eretz Yisrael b'shem Eretz Canaan. Therefore, Eretz Yisrael, which we said is the Jewish people, is also called the word Canaan, lashon achna, which is an expression of humility, of bittul. That's why Avram says, "Anochi offer v'efer." Even though he's called a har, a mountain, sometimes in his expressions of love, but fundamentally he says, "Anochi offer v'efer." And when does he say this? If you look in the Chumash, when does Avram say "Anochi offer v'efer"? It's not just he's having a casual conversation with God, and he says "Anochi offer v'efer." He says it when he's asking for something. He's asking for God to save a horrible city, a stone. He says "Anochi offer v'efer." So to Yaakov says, "I'm humbled." That's what the Alter Rebbe writes in his Yirah of Ketointi, that true chesed and true, if you're a sign that you're spiritually healthy, is if you're humble, if you're feeling affected by kavod or paigeia, or your kavod's being affected, someone's not respecting you enough, or you don't feel you're being acknowledged enough, all the things which, again, it's just human, no one's complaining. But just you have to know, being human is okay. But just at least don't mistake it for a spiritual growth. It comes from ego. It's come from the other space. But true connection to God is humility. Yaakov says, as great as Yaakov was, who lived the life for God, he says, I'm humbled by your kindness. And that's why the Alter Rebbe wrote the letter of Kitointi after he came out of Yitzchak. He was very careful. He told the Chassidim, don't feel special. Because look, the miracle of what happened to Yitzchak, be humbled by such a story. So why did the Arizal change it? If the emphasis is on the greatness, not on the kindness, why did he call it chesed? Because in Eitz Chaim he's talking about the lower level of chesed, which is already in the world of Atzilus, which is not the Erech HaPaim, it's the Rampim, the small complexion. That everything is limited, even the world of Atzilus is limited. And every vessel, which is the definition, which controls the light that goes in chesed, is definitive and limited. As great as Atzilus is, and Avram Avinu was saying, and we learned it before, the Avram Avinu was saying, "Anochi offer ve'efer," to meet this of chesed of Atzilus. So imagine everything is obviously with respect to what we're talking about, but with regard to God's infinite kindness, the Rav Chesed. So there, even the world of Atzilus is called Chesed. It's not Rav Chesed. It's not Gedula. Like it says, Reish Lamed Vav Alafim Rivers Parsois, 236,000 tens of thousands. It's a space, but it's a number. Even though it's a great number, it's still called a small complexion. The larger complexion, who Ein Sof is infinite. And therefore, the chesed of Zer Ampim is called chesed of Ma'av Bittul, because it's totally nullified it has to be nullified, like Avram feels nullified because of its limitations. But the greatness of chesed, which is from Ein Sof, from the infinite, the Rav Chesed, an abundance of chesed. And that's from the God's large expression. Shalmad is much greater than the world of Atzilus. As greater the world of Atzilus is, it's still a limitation. There's a chesed above and chesed below. So what happened? We're talking about, we're kind of just going down the river of the Midos. And finding, when we come out of this Maamar, is kind of to try to navigate and know what we should put our emphasis in. Again, there's nothing wrong with fire, nothing wrong with expression. But you have to, again, just have to know, when you're being a mountain, God's a valley. And when you're going to be a valley, God's going to be the mountain. But sometimes he says, Mishvir Sekelim, but when the system breaks, so when the vessels of chesed in the world of Atzilus are humbled by their limitations, like Avram says, I'm offer ve'efer, I'm like earth and dust, because as great as I am, I'm limited. I can't do as much as Gedol Chesed. There's a limit to how much I could do. So then that's humility. But what happens if Chesed breaks? The system breaks. Which is Shriyas HaKelim. So you have the Chesed, you have kind of that you're using it. Chesed becomes a currency. Shemoil Matayu, that's in the world of chaos where things break. Is the Sav B'chinas Chesed Yishmael. Then it's Chesed of Yishmael. Asher Gam Hu Pazran. He also is Chesed. Pazran means he kind of gives. But there's an agenda. Why does he give? He gives so others should notice. Laharis is Oishrei, to show his wealth. How people can know how wealthy the person is. So you have different levels. So to say the purity of Yishmael is a donation to a cause. The horrible of Yishmael is buying themselves a yacht. Because why should someone else benefit from my chesed? I could also let other people know how rich I am, and only it goes to me. By building a big house, buying a nice car, right? There's a lot of ways that I could show others that I'm wealthy, and I still don't have to give the other person anything. It's just an expression of wealth. So here he's saying the Pizer is, he's ready to give, but it's an agenda. He wants others to notice that he gives. Because by me, the one who makes the large Misha Beirach, everyone knows I'm a wealthy person. Even though, of course, it's very good. It's good cause. It's going to the shul. He wants a name. He wants a plaque. He wants to be recognized. the opposite of his father, which Avram looked at his ability to do chesed as a limitation. He wanted to do much more. And therefore, essentially, even if he's giving, he's only going to give if it benefits. And the benefit has to be recognition, kavod, top of the table, first invitation. It's maestros, difference, it's extras. But if it's going to cost me, it's not worth the investment's not worth the return, because I'm going to lose more than I'm going to gain. The Yishmael doesn't give. Like, where did this come from in the human beings? That chesed becomes a currency as opposed to being an expression of bittul, because the system broke. Like the breaking of the vessels in the world of chaos. There was a great chesed, but it broke. So then chesed of the world of Atzilus tries to put the pieces together. It's tikkun, it's the world of fixing. But in the world of fixing, it's also it's a regular, it's a smaller chesed. A person shouldn't be part of the world of chaos. You have to be part of the world of fixing. Chesed dema, which is a chesed of bittul. Bechinas bittul. V'chein afilu magila reusa be'agmils chasadim. La yimnes atzme miligmo chesed. Even if it's going to be difficult, reusa means ra. Even if it's going to be bad for you to give chesed, there's no positive coming out from it. No, the expression, no good deed goes unpunished. You're going to pay for it, and there's no return. Meaning, say, at least initially, we're not talking about zerei tzedakah and matzmiach yeshuas. We're talking when a person has to right now cut the check. It's going to hurt. You're not going to stop being chesed. And it's not just about money. That money is a small part of it. It's about your time and your attention. You can help someone else. So you say, well, if I help someone else in spiritual time, if I learn with someone Aleph Beis, what am I going to do? What about me? I also have to learn. And to learn with someone Aleph Beis, it's not learning for me. For me to stand on the street and put on film with someone, I could be doing a stronger Avodah. You're giving away from yourself for someone else. So when do you make the calculation that, is it worth it for me? Is it ru'usa? Is it going to be bad for me to go and help someone else spiritually? Is if you're something. So then you're no different than Yishmael. What's in it for me? But when you're looking at yourself, it's not about you. So your chesed is about the chesed. And you're humbled about the ability to even stand there and put on film with people. And when a person is in that way of expression, it's all about your humility, then God could be fully expressive with you. Then God's infinite greatness reveals within the person. When you go inwards, self-nullification, you're making a lot of space for God to express himself with his relationship with you. But if you're going to be a yesh of something, we're not talking about yesh of the fire. It's like I said, it's kind of navigating a bit over here. But if we're talking about a broken chesed, so that comes from the world of tumah, from the world of tohu. That's why Rabbi Kiva said that if the Romans who are not doing what God wants, God has been kind to them, those who make God's will, of course there's even more of expression. Because in the world of fixing, the world of bittul, the definition of fixing is the ability to fix things comes from bittul. And when you have bittul, it's able to bring a revelation of the infinite light. That's why this is the world. This is where the world of fixing is. This is the world. Yes, maybe your tools are smaller. You don't have the great lights of the world of chaos. But you have one main thing, is you're running as a person of bittul. And the Rebbe now puts them together. Now, what does it mean? How could you say Avram is both a mountain and earth and dust? If he's earth and dust, he's not a mountain. And we said before, a mountain is an expression. So now he kind of walks it back a bit, and he says, what's the true mountain of Avram is the fact that he's humble. What's the true mountain of Avram is the fact that he's humble. And the Rebbe now puts them together. Now, what does it mean? How could you say Avram is both a mountain and earth and dust? If he's earth and dust, he's not a mountain. And we said before, a mountain is an expression. So now he kind of walks it back a bit, and he says, what's the true mountain of Avram is the fact that he's humble. The true, where does Avram come? His true mountain. The Har of Avram is because he's an Anochi Aver Vefer. And therefore the mountain is not his mountain, it's God's mountain. It's Har Hashem. Shehu b'chinas bika, b'chinas bittul, mashenkim b'sitr achram on the other side, where you're just a mountain to be self-expression. And this is why the real thing is to make yourself secondary. Don't think what's in it for me, spiritually, in your relationship with God. Again, he's not putting down even the holy expression of Eish, of fire. Person's feeling passionate for God. But you just have to know, but when you're expressive, then God goes inwards. And here, now he finishes off again, like I said, Pashas of many times is getting ready for Elul. We know that the 13 attributes of mercy, which is shining in the month of Elul, is the great Rachim G'dolim, great compassion. When Mashiach is going to come, it's going to be with great compassion. He's going to gather the lost of Israel. Where does the 13 attributes of mercy come from? It comes from the Gedula, like we said before, God's greatness. From God's long complexion and great kindness. The emphasis is on the great, not the kindness. Therefore, in the 13 attributes of Micha, which is revealed, it's talking about where you want to be connected to the 13 attributes of mercy, you have to have Shiraim. Be Shiraim. Shiraim is secondary, leftovers. Bittul, go inwards, be nullified. That's the true vessel. The Bechinis Chaysin Ba'ad Shalom for God's true expression. This is what Yeshaya Navi finishes off. So says Ram, the one who's elevated. Vinisa, another expression of elevation. Morim v'kadosh eshkoin, where does greatness and holiness rest? Estakash fral ruach, by the humble man, the humble person, the humble spirit. I wish everyone a wonderful rest of your week and a wonderful summer. Wish it good summer now. And see you all.